여러분 안녕하세요. 저는 구글 플레이 사업 개발의 김고은입니다.
おはようございます。吉嗣です。よろしくお願いします。
Wait a minute, our audience probably can only speak English, right? They're not on YouTube.
Yes.
Not like the YouTube guys who can turn on auto-translate. So let's switch to English, right?
Okay.
All right. Hi, everyone. Good morning. So my name is Koh Kim. I'm part of the Google Play business development team here in Mountain View, focusing games.
So I'm Yoshi, based in Tokyo. I'm doing the Google Play's apps and the games.
Today, we're here to talk to you about how to go global with Google Play. As you've known from yesterday's many various announcements, Google Play is a really, really big marketplace. And so this morning, we're here to talk to you about how to kind of take advantage of that, but what are some of the best practices and tips to go to a lot of those foreign markets. So let's just get a general idea. So how many of you have come here from outside the US? Wow, that's a lot of you. Asia? Europe?
Cool.
South America? Brazil? Really? Why are you here to begin with? The world's biggest sporting event is happening right in Brazil right now. I just came from there, so I don't even know why I'm here. So, but that's amazing. Thank you for being here today. I'm really excited to have you here. So let's just take a look at what the current world of Google Play looks like right now. Those marked in green, Google Play, people all over the world from 190 countries download and install apps on Google Play every single day. Those marked in green are actually some of our largest markets, not only by install base, but also by revenue. And what's really cool is that it's not just the US. I mean, there's markets all over the world, for many of you probably in the countries that you've come from. And then we'll also talk about a little bit later what some of our fastest growing markets are. Mm-hmm. So this is an example of some of the top, most popular games in the US on Google Play today. And developers from all over the world are actually finding success. Those marked in blue are obviously companies that are based outside the US, in Europe actually. And in Asia, the Asian companies are also marked in red. So that's at least a third of these titles have come from developers outside the US. So what does it take to kind of expand your business outside of your domestic market into the US or into some other markets today?
Let's back to my home country, Japan. So first of all, you go the global or go to the specific countries. So first of all, need to know the users. What's the users' behaviors? So this is my countries, the Tokyo, from this outside of the Tokyo to the commute to the central Tokyo. So in the trains, during the people's commuting, what are they doing is look at their hands. They're touching the smartphones, and probably they're playing the games, or probably they're messaging in their phones. So understanding the users is the pretty important things as first of all.
So Yoshi, what's the average time someone in Japan spends commuting each day?
So average commute time is like 60 minutes, only one way in the trains. Probably it's same as the mountain from here, city to the Mountain View, right?
Yeah, that's about it.
You have a commute.
Well, yes, I do have to commute. Sometimes it's an hour and a half, but I'm driving, right? So I can't necessarily drive and play games at the same time. That probably wouldn't work out too well. So.
Totally different. In here is commute is drive or by car, but in Asia is taking the trains in a commute. That's totally different, and the usage is different too.
Yeah, so think about it: 2 hours a day, 5 days a week. That's 10 hours a week. Times a month, that's 40 hours. It's a lot of game time just in a train. So let's take a look at some of the most popular games by market. Yoshi, you want to talk a little bit about what we see in Korea and Japan? So
in Asia, Korea's game is pretty popular game is the casual games. So cute, the animal titles and the casual, super casual games. And then several times the people tending to some people tending to play in the hardcore games. And in Japan, it's more like some game system combine, like casual game plus monetization systems. We call like mid-casual games in Japan. How about the Western countries?
Some of the Western countries. So in the US, it's pretty well diversified. I mean, people will play a wide variety of games from casual match 3 all the way to like some of the more strategy, simulation, some of like the farm sim building games and a lot of that stuff. But if you look in Europe, especially let's say in Germany and Russia, where some of our biggest markets are, it's a little bit more interesting. You definitely see more of that military, that medieval-esque, really hardcore themes that are coming around. Like in Germany, they're really all about that medieval fantasy, like medieval fantasy themed games, a lot of deep strategy that's involved, which is pretty apparent. And then also they love their football simulation games. I've never seen so many football simulation games in your life. Football, soccer, depending on how you want to, which country in the world you're from. But if you look in Russia, they really like their tank games and their army games and things. But that's what's really interesting. It's like, if you look at a lot of these games, the same gameplay elements pretty much resonate across the board. You have a lot of RPG elements, a lot of, let's say, building characters, going on adventures. Like a lot of those themes are the same. It's just the way that they present it is a little bit different. So now that you have an idea of what types of games are popular in each of these markets, and especially around the world, do you have a game that you think that can be successful? And if so, what do you need to change, whether it's how do you present that game to your audience or do some changes so you can be successful for all of those markets? It's really just pretty simple. We kind of break it down to 3 things. It's like, first is how do you acquire those users to begin with? How do you convince them, hey, you need to install my game because it's awesome? So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then the second is how do you connect with that user when they first get into the game? What is that onboarding experience like? How do you get them kind of hooked to begin with? And then finally, it's like, how do you get those players to come back? Like, how do you retain those players beyond the first week, but actually turn them into a lifetime player? So let's start with the first one. So this is kind of an image of what the Google Play Store looks like today on device and also on the desktop web. What are some of the things that you notice, the first thing that a user is going to see? Well, it's clearly the icons, right? So let's take a look at some of the different icons by market. Do you notice some slight differences from just from looking at the US and versus let's say Asia specifically? Well, in the US, you actually see a lot more realistic character designs, and also a mix of there's male characters, there's also monster characters, so they don't really kind of latch onto a different thing. And then if you look in Korea, for example, it's actually a lot cuter. You see that more anime, manga, visual style elements, and so they really focus on cute characters. Unless you're a sports game, that's probably a little weird if you focused on that. But Yoshi, what is it like in the rest of Asia?
So in Japan, obviously the dragon is pretty famous in there. So put the dragons in the icons is pretty popular right now and top revenue grossing chart. And also the one more trend in Japan is some cute cat is in the icons. It's also pretty popular in Japan too. And also the Taiwan as well as Hong Kong is the Three Kingdoms story is pretty popular theme in there. That's pretty popular.
A lot of Three Kingdoms, right?
Yeah.
Everyone likes cats all over the world. It's just whether it looks like a real cat or a cartoon cat, right?
Yeah, in Japan, it's pretty, everyone's using the cat for their games, themers. All right. So we just talking about the icons. Then user after see the icons, what the user will see is your game titles. So this is an example of the Clash of Clans and the Candy Crush. How to get into the Japan market is the original game's name is Clash of Clans in the English versions. Then they changed to the Japanese version. They making the Japanese name of the Clash of Clans plus their original names. That's what the Supercell did. And also the Candy Crush Saga is more tremendous changing in the Japan market. And then they changed it, the title name is the only Japanese. And also they took off the Saga from their titles for the Japanese market because the Saga is pretty, doesn't make sense in the Japanese. So they took the Saga, then they call the Candy Crush in Japanese only. That's what they said. So right now is the title is pretty important after the icons.
So after the players take a look at the icons and the titles, the next things are definitely is a screenshot, right? If you think about the Google Play Store listing, that's kind of the next thing they're going to kind of look at. So this is an example of a game in the US of like what screenshots look like to a US player. Visual styles a little bit different in the West. It's definitely more focused on the gameplay. It's really simple. It kind of shows, it gives a player a better idea what the in-game experience is going to look like, or what the inside the application is going to look like. But meanwhile, in Japan,
here you go. Wow, it's totally different from the Western titles. It's the Asian title is screenshot is using more like bright and many the characters, text, and try to make it more like not only the game scenes, also they providing a more what the user can play in the world of the games. That's the important things in Asia. And also in the Google Play, you can change the screenshot, also the icons, and you can change for each countries. So you provide probably they tweak those screenshot for the Asian market as well as the US market.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's go. So now you got an idea of how to create like the best store listing for your game in order to get those users to install those games. Now that you got them to install your game, which is awesome, let's go to the next step, is how do you get them kind of hooked onto your game to begin with? Mm-hmm. So in that sense, like, well, even before we even get to the game, let's just talk about mobile networks, right? It's really important to understand each of your local markets, but especially what their mobile infrastructure is looking like. This is an example of me. I downloaded a game. It's called Ace Fishing from Com2S, and it's actually a pretty good fishing game. But some of these games actually just requires a constant network connection. So you can imagine when I was in Brazil, sometimes with all that many people, the connection can be somewhat unreliable. I get a kind of this notice that says, hey, like, we don't see that your device is connected to a network, so we are not going to let you play the game at all. So you can imagine like a user for the first time, if they had no idea that you need a constant network connection in order to play the game, you can tell it's probably not going to be a great user experience. And so we definitely encourage you to do like either one of two things. First, definitely note in your description on your Google Play Store listing if your game does require a network connection in order to actually play the game. And then second, if you have like a constantly connected network game, like one of the things you may want to consider is an offline mode or another game mode or an app mode, so that a user can still kind of do things within the game, but as soon as they get to and actually connect to a network, then they can start continuing that game experience.
Right.
So, but let's talk about what UI and navigation looks like.
Yes, this is the pretty popular games in Japan, and I would like to explain about the UI stuff in what's the popular in the Japan market is. So this is those two titles, Puzzle & Dragons and the Monster Strike, which is the number 1 and number 3 in the top gross revenue ranking in Japan. And the important things is, as I explained before, Japan has the commute cultures, and also so basically those game is the plans and making for these commute trains cultures, which is more portrait mode. And so as possible, they plan the portrait mode for the game, and also they put the many information as much as possible in the one screen, but it's pretty complicated, the navigation, complicated information in the one screen, but the user is pretty easy to navigate in the one screens. For example, the thumb fingers, then user can do whatever they want in the one screens. That's the important things in Japan. How do you think, how about the American styles?
The American
Western style.
American style, you can see like a lot of games actually have a landscape mode, mostly because that's just how, it looks prettier. Most people are used to landscape mode. If you think about like how people have played games or interacted with applications to begin with, mostly it was on TV or desktop screens, so that's clearly landscape mode. But if you look at a lot of the navigation and UI elements, they definitely take kind of a back seat towards kind of like within the gameplay experience. A lot simpler, a lot cleaner UI look. If you want to access certain other game trees or profiles, you actually have to go to that profile and it opens up another screen. Rather than, let's say in some of the Asian games, you can quickly go to different parts of different modes, different sections of the game with just kind of like all in one screen. So it's a little bit different. That's just how, if you think about gameplay times, it makes sense. People prefer the simple and more cleaner looks. But let's also talk about like in-game localization. So we're gonna go to an app. We're gonna take a break and go to an app. So I do understand you guys are here. If you're big soccer or football fans, I know there's the US-Germany match going on. So I actually, before I went to Brazil, I actually used Duolingo to kind of learn a little bit of Brazilian Portuguese so that I wouldn't be completely lost in that country trying to find my way to that stadium. And so what was really interesting is that Duolingo kind of like, it's a foreign language learning app. And what they did is that they kind of made it a very consistent experience, but they made sure when they localized in-game for not only a US user, but also a German user, that they're using the right words, the right font style, and everything consistent across the board. So any US or German can actually learn some Brazilian Portuguese before heading to the matches. So what's really cool about Google Play is like in the developer console, it actually does provide some localization tools for you to get started. You can get professional translations directly through the APK translation service that's found in the developer console. Or alternatively, you can also use the translator toolkit to upload your strings as XML files, and a translation engine can actually create localized versions of that file. So we do provide a lot of tools in order for you to get started in localizing a lot of those markets. And clearly you can see I can either be a US or German and then learn Brazilian Portuguese. So next slide.
In the Asia, is the Lime Lake is pretty popular, pretty important in the Asian market. So this is the example of the Lime Lake is click versions and the in-click versions. So the above one is in Japanese is Hajimemashite, watashi no namae wa Lime Blake and Kim desu. This is the click versions. And right side is how to look like from the user perspective is, nice to meet you, my Lime Blake, name is Kim. It's pretty, natural in the above side. But the in-click version is, Hajimemashite, watashi no Lime Blake, mae wa Kim desu. This looks like, nice to meet you, my name, Lime Blake, Ms. Kim. So from the user perspective, this is using the unnatural, the Japanese or unnatural Asian languages, is the user feel like, okay, this game is not customized for my countries, for my languages. Then user easy to leave the games. So the retention is the using the light Lime Blake is in the game is pretty popular, pretty important things.
But this also applies to the West as well, vice versa. So if you think about, especially if you're trying to think about your navigation buttons and your menu buttons, like Asian languages are a lot more condensed language format versus, let's say, a Western language that can take a lot of room. So you want to be aware of like what your menus look like, what your buttons look like, and then just the amount of text that shows up within the screen. Because the last thing you want is text to kind of run over the button. It would kind of look really weird, regardless of whether you're from Asia or the US.
So we recommended that check in. So after you finish the translation localizations, then check in and ask to the local language, the native speakers, and then check in it looks like a native or not.
Yeah.
All right, fun part.
Fun part. Let's talk about how you actually retain and make money, right?
All right. So in here, do you know the gacha system in here?
Gotcha.
Gacha?
Anyone?
Okay, half of. So I'd like to show the how to gacha work in the game.
So you're turn on the demo?
Yep, I'd like to do the demo. So in the Asia games, especially in the Japan games, so
you got to show everyone your password.
Yep. All right, so I'd like to show the Puzzle and Dragons demo in here. And I'd like to show how to work the gacha in the games So gacha is get the chance to get these strong items or strong characters in the games. Not the guarantee to get the items in the games. That's the different part. Let's get started.
So in other words, it's a lottery.
Yeah.
Okay. How many of you are familiar with Puzzles and Dragons?
Okay.
Again, okay.
Like.
So just playing, for those that are not aware of Puzzle and Dragons, it's it's developed by a Japanese developer, Gung Ho. It's a match 3 RPG game. That's saying. So Yoshi is going to show you kind of one of the common gameplay, common mechanics that we use to get users to kind of hooked into this game. You kind of fight monsters through dungeons, you collect them, and you build them up. In order to get new monsters, you kind of have to go to this dragon that offers something. So we have gift cards.
I have a gift card here for this doing this gacha.
Because we want some. Because in order to progress through the dungeon, it's actually a lot easier to have more powerful eggs. What is this one? How do you like it? No? Not good enough?
No,
it's not good enough for him. So we're going to try again.
Try again. So this is a special collaboration with the Japanese famous anime in here. Silvers.
That's still not good enough for you?
I think it's not enough. Let me try one more.
He has very high standards for what types of monsters he wants.
I want to go the eggs.
Try. Nope,
Silver.
It's another silver. I don't think you're going to get it.
The same characters.
One more?
One
okay.
more.
One more? All right.
One more. I think feels like I can get the gold.
Are you feeling
characters.
lucky? Here we go.
There you go.
I don't think.
Oh.
I don't think it's happening
same.
for you. One more?
One more.
Okay.
One more. This is the last chance, hopefully.
Are you sure you have enough credit in your account to do this?
Yes. This is the last.
Last chance. All right.
Here we go. Oh, silver.
I don't think it's your day.
Okay.
Okay. How much money did you just spend?
$25 in the 3 minutes.
In 3 minutes. I wish I could make that return in 3 minutes. Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, that's the gacha system in Japan. So it's not only this kind of the gacha system is only in this system in Japan, but the popular games is making this systems to making the monetizations, and then they tweak the game balance with the what character is in the games. So they making the characters. When they making the characters, then they thinking about how to affect those characters is in the games.
So what about in the West? So in the West, it's a little bit different. Free-to-play mechanics are, the Ghost games kind of more focus on gradual learning curves. So I remember when I first played Puzzle and Dragon, within 5 minutes they were telling me this is the dungeon system, this is the how do you get match 3s. Also, if you want to get better combos, you have to do this. And they kind of smash everything in within the first 3 dungeons, which is supposed to be 5 to 10 minutes. So whereas in the West, a lot of the games, especially for a lot of these freemium games, they kind of introduce these new features and game modes very piecemeal. It's more gradual learning curves. They want you to kind of experience okay, get an idea. Once you understand, match 3 things. If you match multiple, then you get a combo. And so it's a different learning curve in a lot of those games in the West. And also a lot of these common gameplay mechanics that you see, and especially what they monetize, is not necessarily based on the lottery system. Well, there's some basis on the lottery system, but the focus is mostly more on building, of building items and characters and buildings of permanent value. And so this is actually a screenshot of Tiny Dice Dungeon from Congregate. One of their kind of best monetized mechanics is actually building new dice. So this game is all about you get better dice in order to get better attack rates. So sort of like a lottery, but not really. But what's interesting is that you can build better dice so that you have higher chances of, let's say, a certain elemental damage attack or higher critical damage and a lot of that stuff. But in order to get those dice, you have to kind of put in more money to like get like these different shards in order to create those more powerful dice. And so this is actually what a lot of premium currency is focused on, and especially the monetization among Western players, because they want to give these players something that they can keep versus a chance of getting something that could be valuable. Yep. So two totally different things.
All right, next.
Last thing, prices. And so we really want to emphasize doing your research on prices. People, if you look at, this is a difference between dollars and euros, and I think even in Europe, they don't use a lot of nines anyway, but especially in the US, a lot of prices ends with nines. Don't know why. There's a pricing study on this if you're really curious on why this is. But if you look in Korea and Asia, everything ends with zeros. So that's something you want to check, because if you have a price that ends with a 9 or even any other digit, it's going to look really strange to any player or any user that's trying to purchase any items. They're going to think something's wrong with the game, and so they're not going to end up purchasing to begin with. So what's great about the developer console is that we do have a currency conversion tool. You can input your kind of main, whatever your primary currency is, and then you can see how that will convert in each and every currency where we actually sell into that market. And so you can modify and a lot of that for each market as you want, but these are just some of the tools that we have available in order to make sure that your game or your application is locally relevant to that user.
Yeah, in the main, your main countries, you should make sure they manually put the price range in your games. That would be great for the users as well.
Next one. So let's talk about the last part. Is now that we got their players kind of hooked within the game, let's talk about how do you get them to come back and keep coming back.
All right. So this is the Comcast the games, which is the Korean game developers in the Japan market. So what they're doing is they're doing the user support in the local languages in Japan. So which is the user can comment whatever about the games in the user review, and the Comcast get the this is a good chance to reply to the users' comment and support the users, and then get more good retention from the users. So this is a pretty good example in Japan, and what the outside of the Japanese developers doing in the user support.
And to know, Comtuous is actually a developer. They're based in Korea. And so they actually do this for English as well. And so for a lot of developers coming in, talking to and speaking, responding to your user in their local language makes it that much better. And like they respond a lot better.
And the user thinking about these guys are supporting the local languages, and then, okay, I can trust them. And then they play more in the games. That's the important things. And next one is a little tweak point is, but the notification is an important thing as well. From the user perspective, this is the example though. Don't forget to localize the entire notification in the notification bar. So the subject is in the Japanese in this example, but still the text is still in English, and the user realizes, this is not localized perfectly in Japanese in the local language. So this might be the user probably think about, okay, should I leave the games or should I stay in there? But that's the point is don't forget everything's localized in the notification as well.
And this is true if you have like a content update, right? You've worked so hard to make all this new game mode or new content, and then if you finally push to users, but if they don't understand what you just pushed, then it kind of defeats point. So
something update, okay.
So, all right, let's talk about purchase patterns.
So this is the one tips for entering the Japanese market and the Asian market. So there is we can see the many monthly revenue peak once in a month. So because
and why is that?
Why? because we provide in several the form of payment method for the Japanese users. One is a credit card, two is the gift card. I show you guys, and third is direct carry billing. And the Japanese users love to use the direct carry billing. That's making it once in a month the peak revenues. And the direct carry billing has the limitation of the users in the month. So which is everyone's spending the money in the month and then touch the limitations, then they cannot buy anymore.
So when does it refresh?
So refresh timing is first of the month in Japan time. So after refresh the limitations, then user immediately try to buy the contents. Then the Japanese developers knows about that things. Then they making a special event for this target once of the month. So that's why user want to buy, and the developers providing the good contents and the super layer contents in the month, then making the big revenues in the Japanese market. That's a little bit the tips for the Japanese market.
And this is not in Japan as well. I mean, a lot of other markets like Korea and and even some markets in Southeast Asia, a lot of people don't have credit cards, or they don't tend to use credit cards to make purchases for digital items. And so they'll actually use their mobile phone, or so they use carrier billing, or they use gift cards. So it's actually really good to understand not only how a user plays, but actually how they actually do purchases online, because they'll help you better kind of position a lot of your items and a lot of your monetization mechanics, especially within a game or an app.
All right.
So next thing is not only is it important to kind of understand purchase patterns, but it's also understand what types of holidays or seasonal content you can do to bring players back. And so Valentine's Day is clearly a holiday that's celebrated almost everywhere in the world. And so creating unique content based on that is a great way to kind of get users into game. This is an example of Badland. They've made special levels to kind of include more kind of the Valentine's Day content. And so it's a good way to kind of delight your users coming in. But then we can even talk about super local stuff. So let's talk about in Japan.
In Japan, so the back to the school season in the US is the September, right?
Yep. Late August and September.
Yeah, that's the everyone's making a campaign in their games or in the applications in the US market. But back to the ages, back to the school, the campaign is April, happened in April. So everyone's making the games or campaigns on the end of the March through to the April. That's the different things in the local market. And also I would like to mention about the long holiday stuff. And in Asia, for example, this is the bottom one is the Golden Week campaign in Japan, which is the long spring break in May in Japan, and as well as Korea. And that things is the long vacation is specific for the Japan and Korean market. Then we making the campaign, the developers making a campaign. That's the different things in the other side of the Western market.
I mean, being aware of these seasons is actually very important by region. I mean, I was just in Brazil, and if you push out, and it's actually technically winter there because it's in the southern hemisphere, right? So if you actually push out a summer-themed content, like with beach volleyballs and all that stuff, it's not going to make sense because it's actually in the 50s and raining and dark. So
summer campaign
in winter. Yeah, that's probably not going to make too much sense. So it's very important to kind of be aware of that, no matter, especially understanding where your users are and around the world. Make sure if you're going to push out seasonal content that it's definitely relevant for that region.
All right. So our next step is attract to the another users of the game into the game is collaboration with a well-known IP brand. So this is the example of the Japanese games, Puzzle and Dragons. So they try to acquire the new users to use the famous well-known IP collaborations. Right side is they collaborate with the Dragon Ball, and then user can actually play the Dragon Balls characters in a game. They make the many new users coming back to the Puzzle and Dragons. And left side is Android robot. They collaborate with the Android robot as well, and then making some campaigns and then special dungeon in there, and hopefully
get more users.
They can get the more users in there. So collaborate with the well-known IP license stuff is pretty good way to acquire the new users in Japan market and the Korean market as well.
So that IP actually doesn't only have to be fictional, they can actually be real life as well. And so in Korea, there's a really big like celebrity K-pop culture. Actually, Nexon has decided to do a special campaign with one of the very popular K-pop girls band called Girls' Day. And they decided to build kind of like their almost in-game, like they build an in-game character version of all the Girls' Day characters for one of their MMORPG games. And so it's actually pretty interesting. It's just like kind of getting more users in, understanding that a lot of the users in that region really enjoy K-pop. They really kind of follow like a lot of those celebrities. And so having them be able to kind of purchase or get a chance to even get some of these characters in their game or their arsenal is very, very attractive to a lot of these users as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it actually doesn't stop here. We've only talked about like a whole thing about acquiring, engaging, and retaining a player. It's only like a single player, right? So we're going to talk about like what happens when you get a lot of those players coming in at once. And so you get some very interesting trends and new gameplay mechanics that emerge once not only you get more powerful devices and really reliable networks, but then you have tons and tons of like players that are playing games or interacting with applications. So let's take a look at what's happening in Japan.
All right. So those two titles is getting pretty popular in the Japan market, and what are they doing is the location-based API plus the real-time multiplayers. Real-time multiplayer is getting popular in the globally, but those two titles is you can play with the real friends, close friends, and then you can choose. The one title is you can choose the close friends or the network friends, and the one title is only for playing together with the near friends only. But playing with the near friend is with the real-time multiplayer is getting popular right now. And also the right side, the Slingshot Blades by Colorblue, and they are doing the sandbox in there on the second floors, and then you can ask the Colorblue stuff what are they doing in the games, and then you can play the big screens games right now in a sandbox.
So then when devices get more powerful, this is kind of what happens.
Yeah, as I explained, the Japanese games is pretty casual games and then casual games combined, but it's getting more hardcore games is getting popular as well. This is not the PC online game. This is the game for the Android, and provided by the Asobimo. Name is Izanagi Online, and they're using the Unreal engines. And then those kind of the multiplayer hardcore game is getting popular in Asia, not only Japan and not only the Korea, in some the Asian market as well.
But as like mobile gamer, as the audience kind of expands, especially when we have 1 billion plus devices out there, it actually kind of gives you more opportunities for different game genres to come up. And so, I mean, for some reason, a lot of these games, like you'll see High School Story and This Is Episode, that are kind of reinventing this genre that's called slice of life and the kind of the drama genre in games. If you can remember, like dating sims are actually a very popular PC game genre in Asia, but they haven't really kind of gain a lot of traction in the US, with the exception of The Sims. Mm-hmm. But you don't actually see a lot of that in mobile games. And so if you think about how almost half of our audience is female, but then a lot of these people are going to enjoy these different types of game genres. So it's really interesting to see what new types of genres and applications there are outside of the traditional, I would say, action RPG and a lot of that hardcore elements that are kind of arising through these in the market right now. And what's also interesting is that because it's not just one player, it's about many players coming together and building communities around their games. You see really interesting, I would say, not just gameplay, but interactions that are occurring within the game. Quiz Up, which is the game on the left, they actually have a discussion forum for all of their players that are happening online. And all these players actually come in and talk about like all the different topics about the quiz topics, and they actually kind of make talk about, like, let's say physics, or like, let's just say their favorite TV shows and all that stuff. And so it's very interesting to see the types of engagement that happens just by having a discussion forum or a real-time chat feature within the game. And then if you look at High School Story, they actually allow you to connect with all of those in-game characters with your real-life friends. And so it actually brings this extra kind of personal touch. I mean, imagine like reimagining the high school life that you wanted to lead, but then you can put in all of your old high school friends or some of the other friends too. So it's a lot of fun, a lot of like, you know, small touches that we're seeing to kind of bring that, you know, your current environment into like the application itself. So let's talk about some new awesome markets. Now, remember all this before. And so some of the cool markets that we're seeing with a lot of crazy growth.
Where's the next market?
Where's the next market, Yoshi?
I think you can see the point in the graphic, in the pictures, which is Southeast Asia, maybe?
Yeah, Southeast Asia. So Hong Kong, Taiwan has been rapidly growing really fast in both terms of revenue. Southeast Asia, so places like Indonesia, Thailand, India, tons of installs, a lot of users coming in, playing the games. But what's also interesting, Brazil as well. And so if you see a lot of like rapidly growing stuff, it's just people are getting smartphones, and mobile devices are actually their first real computing device that they've ever had. So it's really exciting to see some of the growth and some of the kind of opportunities that you can have to get into those markets. All right, so what's next? There we have a developer panel regarding on Google Play Games on the services. That's happening later today. That's hosted by Dan Galpin. And later in the afternoon, Greg Hartrell will be presenting about where he thinks Google Play Games can go towards the future. And so definitely check those talks out. Really interesting things, really awesome people too, so that you should get to know. So thank you for coming here instead of going to the US versus Germany match, which I'm going to go to next.
You can see the second part.
I can go see the second half. But if anyone, we have 3 minutes for questions. So if you'd like to ask a question, come up to the mic, and we'll be happy to answer them.
Hi, and could you please talk a little bit about live events in Japan? How has they been run? Like those live events that happen every day for a few hours and give some rewards, which is kind of recent trend, I guess.
So you mean the live event in the games? How many games in the live event in there? So it's depend on the games. I see the several games in the my work, and I saw like the famous games has like 20 or 24 live event in once time, and then they have like 2 weeks event or 1 week's event, and the special event is only 1 day. That's the Japanese famous titles.
Are there any like 2-hour, 4-hour events? Twice a day maybe or something like that?
8 hours.
It depends. It depends. I think Puzzle and Dragon, they do something during lunchtime, but it also depends on the game. I mean, what a lot of these game developers in, let's say, Korea, Japan, all that do, they'll take all of their player kind of behavior data, right, and see where the most engagement occurs within certain time periods. So it's actually very common to see most of the sophisticated game developers, what they would do is they would identify where, let's say, during commuting times, or maybe during lunch hour, or maybe on a single day, to be like, hey, we're going to do an event, a live event that's only going to happen within this 4 hours. You're going to get certain items, or maybe certain drops are going to happen that are going to be more common than not. That's going to be useful. So it's their way to kind of change like the balancing within the game too, so they can encourage kind of different behaviors or different types of items and a lot of the get.
And also too much short timing is you have to figure out your server as well.
Yeah.
So once in the only 2 hours the event, then everyone's coming into your servers in the 2 hours, which is your server is getting cloudy and get the problems. So recently there's some Puzzle and Dragons and some famous titles doing like at least a day.
Yeah, because it's hard to kind of balance that.
Yeah.
So, and also like play game services, we have like quests too, so it allows you to kind of build those types of events on the fly without having anything.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
30 seconds.
Hey, if I'm in a different country, do I see a different Play Store with my own with different language there, or is it just one Play Store?
Are you on device or on desktop web? Because on device, it'll depend on your it'll depend on where your account has kind of linked to in terms of where you made your Google account. But on a desktop web, if you're just kind of accessing Google Play, it'll just show whatever that based on the IP address is. So.
Okay. And then you had mentioned some translation services, I'm assuming for like the copy for the Play Store, and then also you said like uploading like XML files that you would use in your app. Does that cost money or?
So like if you want to hire, let's say, the professional translation services, what it does is we kind of help you connect to those translators to kind of give you a quote. In most cases, they're, I would say, a lot less than what you're going to see if you did go elsewhere outside of our kind of thing, because we know it's volume.
All right, thanks.
So, yeah, no problem. All right.
All right, done.
Very good. Thank you. If you have any more questions.
Yay.
If you have any more questions, I'm going to go see a match outside, and I'll go see it.
All right.